The merely intellectual prayers are not efficacious, for it does not have any effect in opening up the soul, and neither does much of this praying do the work. One little moment of this true praying will be more effective in causing this divine love to flow towards the soul than a whole lifetime of idle repetition of prayers that come from a source merely mental. And let me here say that the mind is not the soul, and much less God. I just wanted to reiterate that.
Yes, because you talked about that a lot in the first message.
Half,
But this, I mean, that's just a powerful, we've covered a lot of this previously in our previous discussions, but this thing that the intellect is only a tool, which we talked a lot about in our first discussion.
And not really even a tool of prayer.
No.
Because remember, prayer has to come from the soul, which is this emotional place within inside of yourself of desire. Prayer, which is from the mind, doesn't have that. You know, it needs to be a feeling you have, which is a desire within you. And that's a prayer. And when God feels that desire, he goes, wow, that's wonderful. I love that. And he always rewards that desire. And if the soul has been prepared through the beliefs of, and also the desire for sincerity, then every time you have this prayer, and you can maintain this kind of prayer quite a lot initially, it can be, might be on and off, hit and miss. But after a while, you get to the point where you start realizing that you can have these kind of desires all the time. Right? Now you have the ability to start receiving God's love all the time because it's the prayer that brings it. The openness of the soul to enable its inflowing. And as long as you still work in harmony with the love already received, it will not be blocked to you.
And that's just like amazing, isn't it? That all you have to do is develop this sincerity and then decide, I'm not going to act in disharmony with this love. And it's a constant flow of love.
Yes. But what normally happens in practice is we receive some of the love and we're quite challenged about what it's now asking us to do. And so then we enter points of resistance where we no longer want to ask for more. In other words, any new asking is not sincere anymore. Because there's a fear in us that has to go. That has to be felt to go. And we have control of that. God doesn't have control of that. God doesn't control what's in our soul and letting things go. We have to choose to let them go. So we have beliefs in ourselves that we have to choose to let them go. And while the divine love in us helps us determine what is a correct belief and what isn't, emotionally, frequently, we have feelings in us, particularly related to fears, that we're unwilling or do not desire to feel. And that is what causes the divine love now to stop flowing for a while we sort that out. We have to sort out our preparedness now of our soul. Our soul's now going, no more, no more, no more. And we have to now work out why we're going, no more, thank you. And work and get to a place of going, yes, please again, where we really want to feel God's love enter us again. So that requires working through the issues, a lot of issues, and of course, God's love has intricate issues, which are not always obvious with regard to ethics and morality. And therefore, we, quite frequently, we need to discover what those issues are, which the love helps us do, that exists within us already, helps us to do, but God's instrumentalities come to play again, helping us to see these new factors that we need to become aware of and how we're now preventing the love from flowing.
Yes, so we need to be willing to change. It's the willingness to change.
And the willingness to release the old.
Yes, to let go of, I should say.
And that's where we have our most of our problems. We're unwilling to release the old garbage to let the love in. We're unwilling to release the old beliefs, the old emotions, and particularly the emotions. Beliefs are relatively easy to give up if there's no emotional context to them. But when there's an emotional context from our past in them, they are very difficult to give up. They require emotional release in order to give up. And many of us are very resistive to emotional release, although the love existing inside of us has softened our heart a bit.
Yeah.
And we often are still quite rigid and not wanting to engage the release for a period of time, and that's what slows our progress.
Yeah, very important, isn't it? This letting go in order to let in.
Yes, it's like, we're often given the illustration, where people, if they've got your hand fist closed, you can't hold something, obviously, somebody gives you something, it's just going to fall off your hand. Yeah. But if you've got your hand open, you can receive. And quite frequently, when it comes to God, we go like that, and then all of a sudden we feel quite overwhelmed about what that now is sort of almost indicating to us that we need to do with our lives, and that stresses us out. It triggers different fears, and particularly triggers different emotions that we do not want to feel, and so we go like that. Yeah. And now the conditions of absorbing more of God's love don't exist anymore. Yeah. Until we go like that again, and until we work through the reason why we did that. Yes. Why we contracted, why we withdrew. They are our important things that we need to do. That's the bit we have to do.
That's what we have to do. But just to make a distinction, we don't have to fully let it go. We just must be willing to let it go.
Yes.
In order for God's love to enter us. Is that true or not?
Well, it depends on what the issue is, because if it's an issue of our own creation, then we will certainly have to fully let it go.
Yes.
If it's an issue of someone else's creation, then there are certain things that occur that will help us let it go, where that God can assist us to let it go. In other words, if it's a creation of our own that's out of harmony with God's love, then justice dictates that we are the person that need to make the change. Yeah. If it's something that somebody else put inside of us through their treatment of us, or their feelings towards us, or our parents or grandparents and so forth, in terms of what was passed down to us, then there are less things that we need to do in order to make the change.
We just need to be willing to let go of the pain associated with that, and then God's love can enter and assist in that process.
Correct.
So it's the difference between feeling and dismantling the pain that I've created in my own parenting, as opposed to the pain and stuff that I inherited as I was...
Yeah, it's not that distinct, because even in your own parenting, a lot of that parenting came from pain from your parents. So it's good that
God measures
all that. We don't need to worry so much about that. We need to just focus more on our desire,
preparation,
and to prepare our soul and continually prepare our soul every time we contract, to realize why we're doing that thing of contraction, and to work our way through the issue of why we're contracting, because that is our control. That's what we have control over.
And just to go back to the paragraph, really you're talking about prayer, and you're saying the prayer state is this state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
And we can't use our mind to get into this
you can't do that.
And you're really even saying, I heard you say, that the intellect and the mind are pretty much useless in this prayer business. There's nothing really, even the realization you spoke of earlier about realizing that you can long and pray continually for God's love and receive it. Even that is not a mind-based recognition, is it?
No. See, this is about the makeup of the soul. And this is something that, Paget struggled even to understand himself, but something that came through in the Paget messages quite strongly, all the way through the messages, is the makeup of the soul is that the soul drives the mind in the end. And the key is to stop trying to get the mind to drive the soul. In other words, trying to get the mind to drive your emotions, and start being honest about what emotions you actually have. You see, this is a point of sincerity again, right? So a person who's trying to receive God's love but doesn't is usually trying to use their mind to engage a feeling of, I want to receive God's love. But the feeling of I want to receive God's love doesn't exist, because there's issues of love that they have yet to resolve. There's painful issues. There's anger that they've yet to let go. Yeah. They don't want to let those things go, right? So their true feeling might be anger. Yeah. And God wants them to feel their true feeling, anger, rather than feel like everything's warm and fuzzy, where's my love, and not getting any, because you're not being sincere and not being honest, you see. So the feelings have to come from the real soul feelings, not from what you hope your real soul feelings,
or what you think you should be feeling.
Think you should be feeling, but rather what they really are. And this is where most people get very stuck.
Yeah.
Most people try to manufacture feelings in the soul through prayer, which is not real prayer. It's just the mind at work.
It's the lesser creation attempting to manipulate the higher creation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's not even sincere.
No.
Because the real soul's emotion is very different to what the intellect is saying I should have.
And that's the state of sincerity, is the state of the soul. What the soul really wants is
what is really in my soul at the moment. Am I really angry with women? Then you're going to have to work through your issues of anger with women. You're going to have to pray about that issue to be sincere.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
You're really angry with men, it's the same. You can make out you're not angry, right, and say, I'm not angry, I'm really happy with everybody, la, la, la. And we see a lot of people who come from New Age backgrounds in particular, and also Christian backgrounds and religious backgrounds. They all seem to have this...
a lot of people in general.
Yeah, a lot of people in general, but more so these kind of backgrounds, because there is this underlying moral thing going on that says, oh, it's really bad for you to have that feeling.
To be angry.
To be angry or to be, to have that...
dissatisfied.
Fear. Like men in particular feel you can't acknowledge fear. And men in particular don't like acknowledging grief, Women, they let themselves acknowledge grief, but with fear, it's like, no, fear is something that men have to sort out for me, And so there's a whole heap of things in that are the real soul feelings.
Yeah.
And those real soul feelings are what God wants to feel from you.
Yeah.
An acknowledgement of them and a desire to work through them, a desire to be sincere about them, those real nitty-gritty, harsh soul feelings that you want to deny that you even have, they are the ones God's interested in.
Yeah.
God's like a really good friend who really wants to know you and really wants to know everything about you, including all this mess that's inside. Yeah. And God wants that to be the real thing that you talk about with God.
Yeah.
Not this whole intellectual games we play.
Yeah.
And have a tendency to play on earth because of our history, and being brought up to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what God's interested in. And this is very important, understanding prayer. Mm-hmm. Prayer is this real raw, nitty-gritty, real feeling that you have, not this make-out, fluffy, I hope I have a desire, or I really have a desire, but I'm very unwilling to deal with this issue, and I'm very unwilling to deal with that issue. God wants to know every issue you're unwilling to deal with. And he wants to know that you know that you're unwilling to deal with it as well.
Yeah, so we could say that prayer is intensely emotional.
Yes.
Just as the reception of divine love is intensely emotionally overwhelming. Yes. Of course, we can't match the intensity of God's love, but we do have to, to me, it's like having everything, all the skin in the game. You are committed in this prayer. It's involving all of your heart, not just a little segment while you watch telly.
It's like the ham and eggs thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
we often talk about the ham and eggs thing. And to give it for our viewers, for ham to be made, the pig is really committed. He dies to give you the ham. For the egg to be contributed, all the hen has to do is lay it. and the hen's not committed. The hen goes on and still continues their life. Yeah. And really, a lot of people's prayer is like the egg deposited by the chicken. It's just a little deposit and move on with the rest of their life, Yeah. But God wants us to have our full heart and our full motivations involved in everything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And not eat ham or eggs.
Not eat ham and eggs is a good thing, but to God that's less important, in fact, than how we treat people.
Exactly.
And so treating people badly, or even treating yourself badly.
Well, and really the theme of our discussion here today, you're saying as well that the preparatory state of, about the issues regarding love, being willing to change that, regarding truth and humility, regarding sincerity and faith, that's even more important than what we're doing.
What we eat.
Day to day.
How clean we are. Yeah. Although you will become clean sorting out those issues.
That's the thing,
and you will refine what you eat sorting out those issues. But, that's a byproduct.
But the truth is we can have a sincere desire and aspiration in those areas while we're still actually quite unethical and immoral.
Yes.
That's how people in the hells actually progress.
Yes.
And it's how some
Trust
of them
me, there are many vegetarians and vegans who pass into the hells of the spirit world, just like there's many Christians who do.
Yeah.
People who treat veganism or vegetarianism as a religion, which many people actually do, are just going to be passing in just as bad a state as anybody else who has been unloving to their fellow man.
Yeah.
So the key to understand here is that, this heartfelt, raw feeling has to be presented to God. And this is where most people are very unwilling.
Well, a lot of us are even unwilling to just be overwhelmed by our own emotion.
Yes.
And
let alone present it to somebody else.
Yeah, prayer is a state of being overwhelmed by our own longing and desire and reaching out to another person.
Yes. Yeah. And you can see how a penitent heart, as we mentioned previously in the message when we talked about it yesterday, penitent heart is certainly going to help a lot.
Yeah.
Because that's going to really help us connect to this raw feelings that we actually have.
Yes.
And that's obviously very helpful when it comes to prayer with God.
Yeah. At the end, which you've also touched upon in this discussion, was just there's no limit to the amount of love that we can
And this is a point
receive.
of logic again. God is an infinite being. God has an infinite amount of love to give. It doesn't matter how much we individually ask for it, we will always receive more if we're in the right condition. We will always receive more. And on top of that, we always have the ability to receive more. And every being God has ever created, every human being God has ever created, will always have the ability to receive more. And therefore always have the ability to grow further.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is a point of infinity. That's the principle of infinity, which we raised a little in our third assistance group, but didn't cover much about.
No. And aside from it being logical, it's also immensely beautiful.
Yes.
It's just this idea that there's always more love that we can receive, and that's a very beautiful experience, a very overwhelming experience.
The other thing is that it also gives you the capacity to always finish up giving more love.
Yes.
So it's not only that you've now received more love, you now have a capacity to be more loving in the universe. And so the perfect natural man only has a limited capacity for loving another. Whereas a person who's received God's love has an ever-growing capacity to love another. Yeah.
Pretty incredible.
Which is wonderful as well.
And very beautiful. And the final thing I loved about your final paragraph is that you used yourself collectively. There's so many false perceptions of you, and even within the celestial heavens and so on. I just love that you said, we spirits, it's us, we're all spirits, we're all the same. Yeah. We're all of us, including yourself and your brothers and sisters, we continually pray.
Yeah, I noticed that many people who have read the Paget messages only hypothesize that I am still a different creature and therefore I don't have a soulmate and things like that. No, I'm just the same. I'm a man just like everybody else was created. I have a soulmate just like everybody else. I have the same potential of receiving God's love just as anybody else. The only real difference is that I was the first person to realise it, that's all.
Yeah.
And even that I was helped to realise.
Yeah.
Because of God's instrumentalities.
So cool, those instrumentalities.
Yeah. So I'm no different than anyone else.
Yeah.
And it sort of makes me sad when I hear, people, and also, often we get a lot of accusations from media and other people saying, I'm claiming to be God and all these same things. So, such a thing couldn't be further from the truth. I am the same as anyone else. I have the same potentialities as anybody else. But the only thing that makes me have a different potentiality is God's love and the amount of it that I've received. That's all.
Yeah.
And everyone has the capacity to receive the same amount or more. So why wouldn't you keep asking?
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for engaging this discussion.
Yeah, no, that was wonderful. Yeah.
It was really lovely. I think we covered quite a variety of topics between the two messages.
Which are necessary so that people understand, because I feel there's a great misunderstanding when people read the Paget messages. You know, they sort of feel that there's some kind of magical process almost that's not scientific.
And that doesn't engage the heart and doesn't involve personal preparation.
Correct.
It's just, there's often a feeling, well, I just have to long and, you know, it's magic.
And also there's no real understanding of the word sincerity, you know, where this longing has to be real, it has to be sincere, it has to come from your feelings. It's not something you can manufacture. You can't use your mind to manufacture feelings.
Yeah.
The feelings are there. If your feelings are and the antithesis of desire, then you've got to get rid of them so that you have desire, you know. If your feelings are not sincere, then you've got to get rid of these feelings that are not sincere so that you can have some sincerity. And if your feelings are not understanding love very much, then you've got to get rid of your understandings of love so that you can actually receive God's love. So you don't think that there's no work. There is effort involved,
as you said,
as we've said in the message, and we'd like to encourage people to make the effort. We see a lot of people giving up because they want a magical solution. And it's not magical, it's scientific. It's like everything, there's a cause and effect. You know?
And inbuilt into the process, even in that preparatory process, there's so many rewards.
There's cause and effect, and there's rewards for doing the preparatory work. And there might be some difficulties because the world around you is not geared towards you having this real personal relationship with God. But eventually the world may be in the future, but we don't want to wait till then, surely. Surely you'd be better off enjoying the relationship now than later. And if you feel like you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, well, that's fine. That's just another preparatory thing that you've got to work your way through, you know, and maybe, you know, look at the possibility of God existing. And, you know, if you're a religious person of all kinds of persuasions, well, that's not going to stop you. Why should that stop you? And the only thing that's probably going to stop you is every time you receive a bit more of that love, and that love does things to you that you then realise you're going to need to do in the world. The only time you're going to stop is if you're afraid of doing those things.
Wonderful. Thank you.